Hi, this is Tracy, and welcome to the Woman Within You podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. So today, I have a very, very special guest with me. Hi.
Hey.
How are you?
I am good.
Welcome. Thank you for being a guest on our show. We have Drina.
Yes.
How you doing?
I am doing wonderful. This is my first podcast ever,
Yay!
but it couldn't be a better chance than to do it with one of my childhood friends. So this is wonderful for me.
Wonderful. So today's topic is going to be, I'm in love with someone outside of my race.
Ooh, okay.
So my husband and I have a lot of different conversations, and he has a lot of different perspectives on the way of the world and social norms and what's going on now. And we have found that Black women are gravitating to marrying and to being in relationships and being in love with men outside of their race. Okay. So my husband loves it. Loves it. He's like, well, you know, it is what it is. Men have done it for years.
Right.
Why can't our sisters do it as well? Right. So my question to you is, well, first of all, you're in love outside of your race.
Right. Yes, I am. My fiance, soon-to-be husband, is a man of Caucasian descent. So,
okay.
But I am a firm believer in you love who you love. You fall in love with whoever you love. There's labels all over the place for it, but you know, I just, it doesn't really matter to me. Background, culture, you know, it's how you treat a person.
Absolutely.
So that's what made the big difference, and that's what made me fall in love with the man that I'm in love with. So love who you want. Don't worry about the stigma, the norms, the traditions. Love who you want. Be free to be who you are, because in the end, it's all about you being happy.
Absolutely. So I ain't gonna lie. I'm terrified. I was terrified. I know I'm married now, but I remember in college, this really cute athlete, tall. He had this long blonde hair, and I kind of tutored him a little bit. And, like, he just showed a lot of interest in me at the time. And I was like, nope, absolutely not. Could I bring him home? Nope, I couldn't bring him home. So I was just like, okay. So what made you say, you know what, I'm going to try something different?
Well, to be totally honest, as you know, but your listeners may not know, I came out of a abusive relationship. So my ex-husband was extremely abusive. And I decided to go on a dating website. We won't even name it because y'all gonna be like, oh my gosh. But anyway, so I went on a dating website and he messaged me. My fiance's name is Matt. So he messaged me. And I was like, oh, look at the cute little white boy. I was like, oh, he likes chocolate. And that was my first response. And the conversation was so smooth. And you know, when you get on those dating websites, it's a whole bunch of creepers, a whole bunch of people that just want that one thing from you. And so he kind of stood out from the rest, not only because he was a white guy messaging a Black girl, but he stood out because his conversation, it was so natural, and and he made me laugh, and he wasn't pressuring me to give information. He wasn't pressuring me to meet up. Maybe it was part of his game, but it all worked in the end, right? And so it was just really different. And so coming out of the relationship I was coming out of, I told myself I just needed to be open, you know, and that was the biggest thing, because I stuck through a relationship because I thought it was what other people wanted me to do, and I kind of did relationships because people told me I needed to stick it out. So this go round, I was like, I'm doing for me. Like, whatever makes me happy, whoever makes me happy, I'm doing it for me. And so I went into it with this open mind because, like you, I was scared of white boys. Like, it was just something about bringing them home to my Southern family. Like, they gonna eat the grits and the collard greens and the, you know, or even just the matter of meeting their family and trying to fit in with their background, because you know, we're little Black girls from Hartford, so it was like, are we gonna be able to blend culturally? Are the families gonna be able to mesh together? And I don't know how. Are your listeners over 18?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But I also had this thing about, like, pink flesh, if you know what I mean.
So I know what you're talking about. I know what you mean.
So that was always a strange thought to me. So even though I would find white guys attractive, once I saw them, like, at the beach with their shirt off, I'd be like, oh, no. Can't do that. So it was this mental thing that I had to kind of convince myself to get over as well. But yeah.
So let's talk about families. I I only know of one other interracial couple where it's a black woman and a white man. And in their particular scenario, and they're no longer together now, but I knew of them from before, the family did not accept her. On the surface, they accepted her, but behind her back and the little digs and the jabs and stuff, it even went as far as calling her a black bee.
Oh.
So, yes.
Oh.
Honey, listen.
Oh.
Okay. So, I don't know if that was the end of her interracial relationship. Right, I don't know, but so how does the family feel about you?
So when I first met his family, I was a little nervous. His mom was born and raised in Louisiana.
Oh, okay. So they have the Southern background too.
So they have some Southern, but it's still a little bit different. Alabama, Black Southern, Civil Rights Movement versus Louisiana, Creole Southern. So it was still a little nervousness. However, Matt kind of, in this situation, had already set the tone because most of his previous girlfriends were women of color.
Okay. So
they were kind of used to him bringing home black girls. So it wasn't anything new to them necessarily. I think when we first met, it was at his sister's house. They were having like a breakfast, I think for like his mom's birthday or Mother's Day or something like that. So it was like the whole family. So it was a little bit.
The first time was the entire family.
So I met his sisters first, and then I met one sister, then I met another sister, and then I met like the sisters, her husband, their kids, the mom and the dad around the same time. And it was really funny because the first time I met his dad, Matt has this big pickup truck, and I go from like what I call Hartford mode to Simsbury mode in a blink of an eye. So we were getting out of the car, and I was quoting some movie, and I can't remember what it was, but it was some ratchet phrase from a movie. And so as I'm hopping out of his truck, I said it, and I look up, and his dad's standing there, and I was like, oh, I'm sure he didn't get this joke. Surely he thinks I'm some ratchet girl from Hartford now. So then I had to 0.5 seconds switch it up into Simsbury, like, hello, how are you doing? And I was like, first impressions, and I work with kids and I teach them all about first impressions. So I'm sure his snapshot impression of me was like, really, Matt, really. But now we're almost 4 years into our relationship, so they just met my family for the first time here at the house, and we had a cookout, and it was fine. My dad and his dad sat out in the back, they laid out, they drank beers. My mom and her mom sat down in the kitchen, and they talked about the South, and they talked about food, and they talked about all kinds of stuff. So that was a little nerve-wracking for me, but it went fine. It wasn't like, oh, that's scary, we can never get them together again. I haven't heard any of the insults. He hasn't told me about any of the insults, so I'm assuming everything's good on that end. And so it was, but at first I was like a little uptight about it.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
So listeners, let me just set the scene for you, right? So she keeps waving her hands in my face, and all I keep seeing is just like this light shining on me with this beautiful ring, okay?
I didn't realize I'm doing it.
It's okay. Yeah. Beautiful ring, by the way.
He did a good job.
Yes, he did, right? So the family's all good. Okay. Now, you have children. And does he have children?
Yes, he does.
He has children. Okay, so now we're talking about becoming, it's not just about you and him anymore, or you, him, and your family. Now it's you, him, the family, and the children. Ooh,
yes.
Honey.
Yes. Yes. So he has 2 daughters that he has custody of.
Okay.
So he has a 12-year-old and a 7-year-old. I have a 10-year-old son and a 7-year-old daughter.
Perfect ages, by the way.
Yeah, like stair steps perfectly. And then when I say we have 2 7-year-olds, everybody automatically assumes they're twins. But no, they're not. So when we first met, though, they were 3-year-olds. So they were young, and we took a while before we introduced each other to the kids.
Makes sense.
as I mentioned, his daughters are half black, half white. My kids are, of course, well, not of course, but they are full black. So just introducing my kids to mommy's white boyfriend was a little bit different because it's something they haven't really been around aside from being, around teachers in school. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like, we had white people hanging out at the house all the time. So just them kind of getting used to being around him. And then just as a single mother with anyone, you want to make sure it's a good fit for your kids because you don't want anybody around your kids making them uncomfortable or making them feel different. So it took a while before we brought the kids into the situation. It took a while before I met his daughters. But once we introduced them, they were fine. And I always joke with Matt, I'm like, I really have 5 kids. Because when he's around the kids, he becomes a child. They're breaking stuff, they're fighting, they're wrestling. So it's, they love him. And so, now that we have kind of blended this family together, of course, it's been a struggle getting used to the rules because I have a set of rules that my kids followed. He had a set of rules that his kids followed. And just those cultural things and kind of mixing the cultures with the different rules and trying to find that happy medium. Right. It can be, difficult at first, but that's one of the things that attracted me to Matt was, we can compromise. We can either agree to disagree and say we're just going to leave it alone, or we can come together, find some middle ground and say, okay, this is how we're going to do it. And he has been really open to my thoughts and how I feel like things should be because I'm old school. I was raised by my mama. She's 70 years old now.
Is she 70? Wow.
She's plus 70. I'm not going to tell
she
her
don't
real
look
age.
70.
But, yeah, so, I was brought up in old school, Southern, my house, my rules type of way. He was brought up a little bit different. So, trying to, find those norms and trying to create that balance in the household where now we moved in March, the beginning of March, so we're about 4 months into this now. So we're trying to get routines down, trying to make sure the kids stay clean, make sure they're doing some chores, So we're trying to get that routine down to get the kids to say this is the normal. When we go to our non-custodial parents, we get to do what we do over there. But when we come back over here, this is our routine here, and this is what we need to do.
Right, and I think that that's really important to keep a routine and to understand that when you're here, this is what we go by. When you're out there, this is how it is. So let me ask the question that you probably knew was coming since you mentioned non-custodial parents. How'd that go? Oh, she has this facial expression, ladies and gentlemen.
Jesus. Okay, how can I put this? The non-custodials in both of our situations are interesting people, to say the least. So I had my situation with my ex-husband where we didn't break up on good terms, to say the least. And so I'm still dealing with kind of the past trauma of what happened in our relationship, but I'm trying to get past it for the sake of the kids. So I don't down talk him or make him seem like a bad person because of what he did to me. However, it is tough for me to kind of come face to face with him in certain situations. But this past Memorial Day, I did a very grown up thing, and we had a cookout, and I actually invited him to the cookout. I know that was so grown up of me. Patrice has even dropped lip to the floor. Yes. So
wow, congratulations on doing that.
Yeah. So
because healing is important, and that just shows that you're in healing and you're in that process.
So when it comes to the non-custodials, both Matt and I support each other in kind of how we deal with it and how we deal with them. Of course, it's different because they're both still single people in their own lives, so they live a different life than that of mommy and their dad who's engaged. So but yeah, I invited him over. He came over for a good minute and actually kind of overstayed his welcome, and I had to give Matt the nudge like, hey, it's time for him to go. And so Matt ever so kindly was like, hey,
see you later.
So
she threw up the deuces, y'all.
Yeah, I know y'all forget y'all can't see it. But yeah, so Like, and that's one thing, like, he had my back when he was like, because he kept checking on me. He was like, you good, you know, and he made sure I was okay. And granted, I kept my distance from my ex, but, you know, Matt welcomed him just like anybody else. We also invited his kid's mom over. I think it was another something we did here, and she came over for that. So, and, you know, they're not, like, bad people. It's just that the grown-ups' relationships in these situations ended on bad terms.
Okay.
So by no means are they necessarily horrible people, but it's just a lot of healing that we have to do from our relationships. And then when you see kind of the unfavorable traits of the other parent start to trickle into the kids, and you're kind of like, you want to, like,
yes,
shake it out of them, like, get the demons out. But
pray them demons out.
Exactly. So we have been, you know, supportive with each other, to say the least. You know, when it comes to communicating with the other parent, we try to, you know, make sure they don't get stray too far from what we do as far as homework, making sure they stay with their commitments, making sure summer packets get done, or, you know, bedtime, stuff like that. We try to, you know, of course you can't control what's going on in somebody else's house, but when it comes down to the kids, like you said, routine is so important. So
absolutely,
you break that routine for 2 nights over there at their house, and then they come back, and then we have all hell trying to get them back onto it, because it's a matter of, oh, I got to do that at daddy's house, or I got to do it at mommy's house. And so, you know, we try to communicate with the non-custodial parents as much as we can about what's going on here, what kind of things are we're noticing with the kids, if they need to work on something for homework. You know, we try to communicate that as much as possible. And so we're learning, to say the least, how to blend and how to make it easy on the kids, and how to bring everybody to the table. We're learning, and it's definitely been a learning process, because the first time Matt and I were in the same vicinity as my ex-husband, I was weirded out.
I can imagine.
It was just weird having the person you currently love and the person you're building your future with versus somebody you tried to love and you tried to build a future with. And so it was a very weird dynamic for me. It still is kind of strange, but, you know, it's all a working process.
I commend you all for being the adults in the situation, because, you know, sometimes, you know, one party wants to do the right thing and the other party is resistant, or they have animosity, or they don't want to be adults in a situation. And at the end of the day, guess who it's about? It's about those beautiful children that were created in love. And yes, maybe the relationship didn't work out between the parents, but it doesn't mean that you can't co-parent.
Right.
And I know for me, like, I don't have a co-parenting situation because there is no relationship with my son's dad, and not because of my part.
Right.
But I still try to read co-parenting books, because sometimes, especially as mothers, you be like, oh, he's a deadbeat. You know, you might be thinking in your head, but you don't want to say it. And it takes a lot for you not to say it. So I can imagine. I just respect you both, and I appreciate the fact that you can co-parent honestly, and that you invited them over to your space.
Trust me, that was a big people move. I still pat myself on the back for that. Like,
woo! Listen, I'm patting you on the back for that too.
Yes.
So I want to talk about social issues that happen. So we're in this current climate with the current administration and everything that's going on. Black Lives Matter, all lives matter, blue lives, whatever. Purple lives matter, it doesn't matter. How do you handle that? And do you talk about these things? Do you have different views? What happens when that happens?
So here is where the cultural difference comes. Because Matt he grew up in Waterbury.
Okay.
So he grew up around a lot of people of color. He grew up, most of his friends were people of color. He grew up on the basketball team. So he never really recognized how things can differ just because of the color of your skin. So when Black Lives Matter and all that stuff started happening, we got together. Probably within that first year or so when we were together, that was the time when the KKK was marching down in
Charlottesville.
In Charlottesville. So he was just kind of asking me how I felt about it. And that was one of our first conversations we had about kind of that racial divide that exists. And I had to actually enlighten him on the whole like white privilege, because he never recognized it. Because of course, if you're not with somebody that's pointing out the differences and how you may be treated versus how I may be treated, it doesn't click until somebody goes, see, this is where it differs, right? So there will be small instances, and now it's to a point where we can joke about it, but like for instance, at one point he drove all the way from Waterbury to Hartford without his wallet.
Oh man. Wait a minute.
Which means he had no driver's license, no ID, let alone no debit card, no nothing, no identifying.
Oh, I would have had to turn back.
And that's what I told him. I said, geez, you're brave. I said, but that is a situation of your white privilege, because you feel like even if you got pulled over, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. I said, but what you have to realize is black people now are getting pulled over for not even using a blinker, and they're ending up dead. Yep. You know what I mean? So, and I said, and that's a natural fear that I'm having now as a black woman. That's a natural fear that I have now for my black brothers, you know, who drive around constantly by themselves. And they're licensed to carry because they're in the armed forces.
Right.
So, so that was one of the smallest things that made him go, oh, damn. I might have some privilege here, you know. So every once in a while, something may or may not happen, and I'll be like, "See, there's the privilege," and it's making him recognize it more. I don't point it out to like a point of making him feel uncomfortable about it, or to put some kind of divide between us. But it's important that he recognizes it, and he recognizes how he can use his voice to be an ally and not just sit quietly through it. So, I mean, even something as small as sharing stories on Facebook. If I shared something, he may share it. Okay. And we did like this whole body positivity movement in New York in December, where he decided to walk down a runway with me and just kind of say, you know, I'm here as an ally. Because I love people in general. So the LGBT community, you know, and just black, white, whatever, Asian. I just feel like everybody should have the same rights.
Absolutely.
And so, whereas I'm loud and I use my voice, he's more in the cut, like, okay, I got your back. So, like, pushing him to the forefront of the body positivity moment, where he came out with us. And guys, we were in the middle of Times Square in underwear.
That's amazing.
So the fact that he was able to walk with me, and that was a big moment for the LGBT community, because it was a lot of trans women, trans men, just walking to say, I'm here, I'm comfortable in my body, and this is what I look like. You could take it, you could leave it. And so we did that to kind of stand in solidarity with those brothers and sisters. And the fact that he was able to come out of his comfort zone so much, and he's never walked a runway, never really been in the public eye, but the fact that he was in the middle of Times Square in his underwear, you know, that goes to show that once you enlighten some people, they're willing to make the change in order to use their voice for better, instead of just sitting back and letting it happen. And I say some people because some people you can talk to until you turn blue in the face and nothing changes. So, but that's kind of how we've been addressing that. When things happen, I let him know, look, this is what happened, and this would have been different if he was a white man. You know, he got off because he was a white man. If he was a black man, he probably would have been 6 feet under by now. So I definitely point out those differences so that he knows, because he's raising 2 half black girls.
Right.
So he still needs to know how to deal with that, you know, without always automatically thinking, oh, because they look like they could be white or they look like they could be Spanish, that it might slide. Because when they get tan, they get brown. And so, you know, he has to know how to handle those issues.
That's amazing. I'm like so inspired by you. Like I really
inspired
am.
By you.
So my question to you is, how do you feel about, and this may sound crazy, but we're humans, other people's opinions? She rolled her eyes, y'all.
So,
because I know somebody had to say something. I know sometimes when you walk down the street or you go to an event, you may get a look.
You know, and it's funny because for every look that we may get that may seem a little off, we get so much praise. Like, I remember one time we were sitting in, I think it was either Red Lobster or Olive Garden, and we prayed over our food. You know, when we go out, we try to make it a habit to pray over our food. And it was just the two of us, and we prayed over our food. And as soon as we were done, there was this older white couple, and they stopped at our table, and they said, "We are so happy to see young couples like you guys still praying over your food."
Wow.
So for moments like that counts way more than the ugly stares you get, or the, "Oh my gosh, there go the black girl with that white guy," or whatever the case may be. It's kind of like people say that because they're not happy in themselves. And so it took me a lot to get to that point where I was like, screw what everybody else has to think. And that was part of my healing process from my previous relationship. So that didn't just come with dating Matt. It was just kind of like, look, I'm happy. So you could either jump on board and get some of this happiness, or you could keep it pushing, because I can't let somebody stop my joy anymore.
Absolutely.
I did that for 7 years in my past relationship. I held back so much of myself that I was pretty much drowning in misery. So it took me a while to get back to that point, but it was like, look, I'm going to be happy regardless of what you feel. So either you could take it, you could leave it, but either way, I'm still going to live. So
that makes me so happy to hear. It really, really does. So how do you introduce culture? Like, I know for me, I teach diversity classes, and white people are always very shocked when we say that there's no such thing as white culture. They're always shocked. Like, they don't get it. I'm like, there's no white culture, ladies and gentlemen.
I laugh because, like I said, Matt grew up around people of color. So his culture is not your average white culture, which may be why we mesh so well. But we joke because his best friends are Jamaican. So he eats the curry goat, the oxtails, he drinks the ting, and all of that stuff. Meanwhile, I'm sitting on the other side of the table with my whole mouth curled up because I'm like, ugh, that is so disgusting. So it's almost like our roles are reversed, and sometimes we joke that he's blacker than I am and I'm whiter than he is, because, for instance, we went to his friend's restaurant. He opened a restaurant in Waterbury. It's a Jamaican restaurant. At the point in time, I had faux locks in my hair. And he said, you know, Drina, they're probably thinking you brought me here. Little do they know, I brought you here because these are my friends. And I was so out of place there because they were playing Jamaican music. I don't know how to whine. I don't know how to do any of that. So
girl, you better practice in the mirror.
So I'm just standing in the corner like, okay. And then they were like speaking patois, and I'm like, Matt, what they say? So he's like translating for me, and so it's funny. And then I brought him to an Imagine Dragons concert. So I brought him and the kids. I made T-shirts. We had Imagine Dragons T-shirts on. And then he's like, Drina, they probably think I brought you. Little do they know that my black girlfriend at the time rounded up the whole family that comes to this Imagine Dragons. So we joke a lot because in the things we do, it's definitely not your stereotypical stuff. So, and that's, I think that what is kind of what makes our dynamic a little bit different and not as average, because he probably listens to more rap music and more reggae music than I do. I remember one night I came in the door, he was blasting reggae music through the house while he was cleaning, and I'm like, this is who I live with. This is who I'm marrying, because he's not your typical. But then he does crazy things, like last night we went to the riverfront to watch the fireworks, and he's standing up on the edge of the thing, and I'm like, see, there's the white boy behavior that I know. There it is. So then he does stuff like that, and I'm like, crazy white boy, but I love him. And so it's so weird, our dynamic, because I do things that may be typical, I put it in quotes, like skydiving, typical white people stuff. And then
because I'm not going skydiving.
I'm gonna bring you one day. We going. Yes, ma'am. It's fun. It's the best. I promise you. So our roles at any point in time can be just totally flip-flop than what you're used to culturally.
So I'm learning so much even today, and I know we say, oh, we don't care, or we don't have prejudices, or we don't have preconceived notions, but we always have that.
Oh, we do.
And so I'm learning so much from you and from this scenario that it just makes my heart smile, because you, number one, you love who you love. We we didn't say in the womb, okay, when I come out, I'm going to be this color, this ethnicity, this. I wish I could have said, can I have a flat stomach?
Girl.
But, we don't get that choice, right?
Not at
So
all.
this is definitely a learning experience, and I appreciate your honesty. I appreciate your integrity, and I appreciate your openness and willing to step outside of the comfort zone and to come on this podcast and talk to me about it.
Treese called. I was like, yes, I'm there. Never did it before, but let's do it. God.
It's so much fun, right? Yeah, but I just want to know that I just so appreciate you. And when I came over today to do this podcast, he was so welcoming. I gave him a big hug, and it was just wonderful. And I could feel the love inside of your house and with you guys. So I just definitely appreciate that.
Thank you. We tried.
Any parting words for our listeners?
No. Love who you want. Don't worry about what grandma wants, what mommy wants, what your brothers say is acceptable. If you want to get you an Asian dude with tattoos on his face, get him. Like, it's because if you always live your life for somebody else, you are never truly living your life. You will never truly walk in your blessings, and you will never truly be happy. So chase your own happiness, and don't worry about what everybody else has to say.
Oh, can I ask you one question before we leave?
Go.
And those were wonderful parting words, and we're going to use that as our affirmation for the week. But let me ask you one more question. Religion.
Okay. So he at one point was Catholic.
Okay.
But backed away from that. He went to Catholic school and the whole shebang. He kind of just wasn't religious in the sense of going to church every Sunday, but we both believe in God. We both pray, as I mentioned before, but neither one of us is religiously going to church. We do on occasion visit churches in the area or a specific church in the area, and it's not a big deal. It's a non-denominational, and I usually choose non-denominational over anything else, even though a lot of non-denominational, especially when you mention Black, it has its roots in Baptist, so people are there catching the Holy Ghost just the same.
I was just going to say, did the Holy Ghost scare him?
No, so he wasn't bothered by it. I think it was something new for the kids, though, but even as a child, when you see something like that happening, it's shock value no matter what color you are or whatever. Right. So unless you were born and raised in church, it's something new at any point in time. So with religion, it's not a barrier. We both believe in God. We both pray to God. We both thank God for our blessings. And so we haven't really gotten, and this may sound bad 3-4 years into a relationship, but it hasn't been a conversation of whether or not we're going to be Methodist, a Baptist, a Catholic. Gotcha. But we know we both love God and we both praise Him for our blessings.
Amen.
So that's all that it takes.
Amen. So our affirmation of the week is just going to be what Drina said. The affirmation of the week is always available to you on www.thewomanwithinyou.com. I'll also put it on Instagram. I'll put it on Facebook as well. It's just going to be love who you are and love who you want.
Right.
So love who you are and love who you want.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining. And I hope you'll come again. We'll talk about something else.
Of course. Whenever you need me, girl, I'm
here.
This is fun.
And listeners, I thank you so much for tuning in. New episodes every Thursday. We are available on multiple social platforms, multiple devices, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Lisbon, YouTube, you name it, we are there. So I just want to leave you once again with our affirmation. Love who you are and love who you want. But always remember that you are strong, you are fearless, and most of all, you are beautiful. Thank you so much for tuning in.